Hi, it's Leigh. I'm at Toco today, and we're going to be doing a sew along of our new disco tee. Is coming in the capsule collection that we just released, and we have a short sleeve version, which I'll show you the full sew along for, and then we also have a dolman version, which is sewn pretty much the same way, except for the addition of an armband. Obviously, it's a longer sleeve in general, but it's sewn the same way. We'll be using industrial serger for clean finishing, and then I'm going to show you on my home machine some of the techniques I use for knits as I'm working on this fabric. So here we go.
So I just want to take a few minutes to walk you through a few things on a home machine which can make sewing knits a little bit easier. The problem with knits is that they can get roughly lettuce leaf stretched out, or on the other side you use a straight stitch and then you put on a shirt and the threads break immediately. They just snap because their straight stitch is not made to stretch at all. So there's a couple things just going in immediately that you want to do. A good idea to use is a stretch jersey. It's also a ballpoint needle. Depending on, this pack has multiple sizes in it. You can use that depending on like your fabric weight, the lighter or the heavier one. And then I'm also going to show you in just a little bit how to set up a twin needle, and they come in different widths. I'll talk about it more. This one unfortunately is not a jersey knit, but you can buy those. This is a universal, so it's kind of made for more wovens, but I was able to make it work on this. So in my machine and a lot of newer machines, they do have a handy thing called a stretch stitch. On my machine, you can kind of see it's all these stitches in purple. And what those do, you can see here with the diagram, it's kind of got like 3 stitching on each one. So this is a straight stitch and that's a zigzag, just regular. But however, when it's stitching, they move forward and they move back, and that creates some stretch within that stitch. So on my machine, I can utilize those. On some machines, it'll have a little SS up at the top on your wheel. Maybe I've seen that on some of those. So check your manual, always check your manual and see if you have a stretch stitch function, because that can make it really nice if you don't have, the twin needle, or, you want to do a hem other than a zigzag. A zigzag inherently, just a plain zigzag, has some stretch to it. But some people don't like the look of a zigzag. So if you want more of a straight stitch look, then you can play around with the stretch stitches. And on my machine, I do that. I also shift down here. This is my stitch length wheel, and so if I go way down here, I have a buttonhole, and then if I keep going, it puts it into this stretch stitch function. So your machine might have something like that. If not, if you have an older machine, like I love vintage machines, but a lot of times they don't have a zigzag or stretch stitch function. And one trick that you can do on that is just to pull it slightly as you sew it to give a little give to your straight stitch. You never want to pull it so much that it's having a bad tension where it's coming off the fabric, anything like that. And again, it could definitely break that stitch. Again, you could use a zigzag if you have that. Twin needle, what we're going to use in this sew along is an industrial serger. We're doing an industrial cover stitch just to show an example. And this little home machine of mine. So these are the machines we're going to be using. So we have our pieces already cut out. There's a front and a back here, and then a neckband, and then some of our kind of basic tools. We don't need a lot of specialty tools for this sew along. Marking tool, seam ripper, clips, ruler, scissors, snips. This is what the dolman tee looks like. So you can see that armband. I did do contrasting colors for the neckband and the armband, so you can see that here. The first thing I'm going to do is get out some tools for marking the darts on this t-shirt. So you'll see our pattern looks a little bit different than yours because this is from our industrial plotter. So there's only one dart marked, but I'm going to be working here on the inside of the garment marking my darts. And so I poked a hole with my seam ripper or an awl, whatever you have, and then I mark the end of that dart. I already do have notches marked at the top of the dart at the shoulder seam, and so then I'll just connect a line here. So I just kind of mimic that dart that's drawn on the pattern with a removable pen. This is a pen that washes out with water, and you can see me towards the end of the sew along. I'll show you how I just kind of dab that out, but as soon as it gets washed, it all goes away, these blue lines. So that's me marking the front of the shirt from the inside, and then again you'll see me working on the back side of the shirt from the inside. So next we're gonna do some pins here on these darts, and sometimes if I'm sewing for myself, I won't even use pins, but just to show you, if you wanna get set up at the sewing machine, some slinky knits for sure I will pin. This is a pretty substantial cotton jersey, so it's not too bad, but just wanted to show you how you kind of fold and pin those darts. I'll do all 4 of those and then take them over to the machine and sew them all at one time. So here, sewing the dart, anytime you start at that point, you just want to make your back tack small, and then try to make a nice, smooth, straight line all the way to the shoulder seam here on this dart. It's not a huge dart here, you'll see, but it gives a lot of nice little detail there on what could be a basic t-shirt. It adds a little element that really adds some shape to the shirt and some interest. So we love this little shoulder detail. So the beauty of a serger is that you can use it for seaming and clean finishing. So I'm going to use it for all of my seaming on this garment. It's just fast, it's easy. I love a serger. So if you have one, definitely use it here. Going over those darts, you can either push them, in the same direction. Sometimes if you're using a thicker fabric though, I will push them in opposite directions just to reduce some bulk there, which is kind of what I'm showing Libby here who was filming. One is pushed to one direction, one is pushed to the other, and that's just kind of something I do from working with thicker bags and materials. Putting darts together can cause a lot of bulk, so sometimes I'll do that there at that junction. So while I'm here at the serger, I'm just going to go ahead and move right into my side seams. You notice I'm not pinning, I'm kind of matching as I go. Again, because this is a pretty substantial knit, I feel pretty comfortable doing that. The one tricky part on this short sleeve is it has a really cool shaped hem there, which makes this a nice finish. However, on the serger, it's a little tricky. I had to kind of walk it around so I didn't cut into my garment too much. There is a knife on a serger, so it's pretty easy to cut into your seam allowance there. So just be careful as you're doing that part if you are working on a serger. So I'm going to pause here for a second and just show you the dolman here. This is this sleeve panel that we're going to attach, and again I just use a serger. Now my panel I attached was a rib actually, so I'm going to put it on the bottom by the feed dogs on the serger. That's going to help pull it through a little easier. Anytime you're using something that has more stretch than one of your other materials, always put it on the bottom if you can. Now if you choose to, afterwards you can go ahead and top stitch this flat if you like the look of that. We chose not to. So now we're going to move right back into our sew along for the tee. So once the body's together, I'm going to work on the neckband. So I do this small seam that attaches both ends of the neckbands together, and then it's going to get folded, kind of back on itself so that it's the right side's facing out on both sides of that. And you can see I kind of show here how I push those seam allowances again to either direction just to reduce bulk at that place. So that's kind of what I'm showing, one's going one way, one's going the other, and then I fold this in half to kind of prep it for sewing. Now I did not pin this, and again I'm showing you kind of our industrial ways that we do things, but feel free to use a pin here. You could even stitch this fold, stitch this band together along that raw edge just to hold it while you're sewing. Again, I'm using this knit, it's not crazy widgy, it's pretty easy to sew, so I'm just going to fold it and work around that circle of the neckline as I go. I'm matching the back seam to that, and then next is the center notch, which I'll match, and then you also have notches at your shoulder seams, so I will put some clips there just to kind of hold that in place for me. And then I just kind of get it on the serger and just serge it right on there. Again, you could stay stitch these first, whatever your comfort level is. But I do like to work from the inside of the garment. You see I have the garment inside out, and so this smaller circle, you will be stretching this band. And it just might take some practice to get used to that, to stretching something to fit something. But working from the inside of the circle here where I can really see what I'm doing was really helpful for me. So the whatever I'm pulling, I like to have up so that I can see there's no gathers, there's no puckers happening there. So you might just have to practice this. Make sure you move your clips out of the way, or pins, as you get there to that point as you go around. So next we're gonna press up our hems on our sleeves, both sleeves, and then the bottom hem as well. So here we have a 5/8 inch seam allowance here. It's just a single fold here, so it's not too bulky with this knit. You will see later, actually, you'll notice that I have a serge on my edge. I did come back and decided I wanted to clean finish this edge just to give it a little bit more, a little substantial edge there when I did my twin needles. So if you notice that later on, now's the time when you would do that serge, if you want to do that, to clean finish that and give it a little more structure there where your twin needle is going to hit. And so here, I've done it to my other sleeve, and now I'm pressing up the hem on the bottom of the shirt. And you'll see when I use the iron, especially on knits, I do press. I don't push or pull the iron. I press it down and then lift it up and press it down again instead of, sliding it, because that can stretch it out even. And if you're using steam, that can kind of set in that stretch. So anytime you're working with knits, you want to be careful of that. So for the hems on this t-shirt, we're going to do a twin needle on my home machine. So I just want to show you how I set that up on my FOF. I've already excuse if it's a little jittery, I'm holding it myself right now. This is the extra post that came with my machine. Yours, might go on the top, or there might be a hole in the back usually. On mine, it's right here, and I just put on the same spool of thread, that I'm using on the other one, which for my machine is down in this little indentation down here, which is pretty cool. And then basically what's going to happen is I'm going to thread it, and I'll show you that as I'm doing it. I'll put it on video in front, but it's going to go from this spool. They're going to follow the same path, and then at my tension disc here, one will go to the left and one will go to the right of that tension disc, and then they just get threaded the regular way until you get down to your bottom, which actually don't have my twin needle in, but this is what it looks like when you buy it. It comes in different widths. I've already taken out my regular needle, and then I'm going to use this one right here. You can buy one specifically for knits, and this one's pretty narrow, you can see, and you can get them wider apart though if you want a wider stitch. But this is going to kind of imitate a cover stitch, which it'll have a zigzag on the bottom, and it'll have two twin thread lines on the top of the fabric. So it kind of looks like an industrial cover stitch machine, or a cover stitch, even a home cover stitch machine, which is specifically used for knits, for hems, and it's going to make it look really professional. So I'm going to show you how to set that up. Once you get your twin needle in, you're going to want to do some test runs, and to be honest, some machines will, do a perfect stitch immediately, and others you really have to kind of mess with the tension sometimes, make sure your bobbin's threaded well. And honestly, my machine is older, my tension discs are a little bit worn out, my springs and things, and so it took me a while, and it's not totally perfect. But what you want on the back side there that you can see is a really nice zigzag. Some things that can happen with a twin needle are tunneling, where it's a little puffy. There's a lot of things that can come up that you might have to troubleshoot with the twin needle, but if you can set it up and get your machine running smoothly with a nice zigzag that has some stretch on the back side, and then those 2 stitches, towards the front, it can be a really nice detail to add to this kind of top stitching like I'm doing around the neck. And then again, you'll see me use it on all my hems. So now I'm going to start working on my hems with the twin needle, and you are, unlike a regular hem, you are working from the top side and you can't see what you're doing. So this is one of the challenges of both using a twin needle and a cover stitch machine. So I'm really being careful, to use my guide there on my plate that has my, dimension. I want to make sure that I'm catching that. So you can see as I go along, I check it. I actually run off at one point and have to fix that. And that's fine. That might happen. And again, excuse this extreme arm angle here. I was kind of filming it myself and trying to figure out how to get in there where you could see it. So yeah, you see a lot of arm here. So yeah, in the beginning here, I had not quite caught my hem allowance that I had. So you'll see me here, just like you guys, seam ripper is my best friend. And I just take out those stitches that weren't quite catching that hem. So it takes a minute with the twin needle, you've got double threads and things like that. But I just get rid of those, and I've connected there at the beginning and end. So now I'm going to work on my sleeves. The home machine's really nice. I can take off my panel and make it into a free arm, which is super nice for doing these like narrow little hems. And you can see those go by pretty quickly. So we're going to shift over again really quick to the dolman, just because I wanted to give you a little view of what it looks like on an industrial cover stitch machine, which again, the twin stitch kind of mimics. You'll see these needles are a little bit farther spread apart. Rachel has a piece of tape there on the machine, and she uses that kind of as a guide for doing that fold under. And you can see here on the back, it just makes a really nice, really stretchy stitch. This is the stitch you'll see in most commercially made knit garments. So this is what we use at SoCo, and you can buy home versions of these, and they are also pretty awesome if you're sewing a lot of knits. So now we're going to do kind of a final press on everything, and you'll see it's just amazing what an iron can do sometimes. You might have some slight puckers, some things like that, and you give it a nice press. As long as you haven't stitched in, an actual pleat, the iron will do a lot to get rid of that, and it kind of sets in those stitches. It flattens everything, makes everything just look really nice. And then, so we'll do both sleeves, and then the darts, the neckline, and then we'll start to work on the bottom hem. So now as I get in here on this hem, you'll see I'm going to clip some threads. It's a real sign of somebody who's a little more experienced if you keep the inside of your garment really tidy. So that means snipping any threads, you know, pressing things, just making sure that, you know, when you're done, the inside looks just as nice as the outside. You can see my blue line a little bit, so I just use some water to get rid of that. And again, you know, as soon as you wash it in the washing machine, those will be gone, but I did take a second just to try to get rid of some of those points that I could see on the point of my dart there. So there you go, that's the tee. It's a pretty quick sew and a great way to start knits. I had some amazing models to help me out today. So Ruth here in the disco tee, totally getting down. So thanks, Ruth. And then the dolman you'll see here next, you know, with the bands, with the different colors. And then Rosie was gracious enough to try it on and do a little posing for us. So thanks, y'all. And yeah, I hope everybody likes sewing this t-shirt.